Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at a really important time right after the American Civil War. It's called Reconstruction.
Right. It's this period where the country was trying to, well, put itself back together.
Yeah, figure things out. And politically, wow, a lot was happening. We got some great source material on this.
We did. It shows just how tough it was. Big questions, about the South rejoining, and crucially, the rights of the people who had been enslaved.
So let's jump right in. One of the first big dramas was about President Andrew Johnson.
Lincoln's vice president, yeah. After Lincoln's assassination, Johnson's suddenly in charge.
And he and Congress did not see eye to eye, especially about how to treat the South and protect the rights of Black Americans.
Not at all. Congress, particularly a group called the Radical Republicans, they really wanted strong protections, citizenship, voting rights.
But Johnson, he had different ideas, much softer on the former Confederate states.
And when Congress tried to pass laws for those rights, Johnson actively fought them, used his veto power a lot.
Which, understandably, made Congress furious. They felt he was blocking progress, really undermining what the war was fought for, in a way.
Exactly. And it led to this huge step, impeachment, trying to remove him from office.
Can you remind us real quick what impeachment means?
Sure, it's basically like putting the president on trial. The House of Representatives votes on whether to accuse him. That's the impeachment part.
Okay.
Then the Senate holds a trial to decide whether to actually remove him from the job.
And they did that with Johnson. They accused him.
They did. The House impeached him. The trial in the Senate was incredibly tense.
But he wasn't removed in the end, right?
No, he survived, but just barely, by a single vote in the Senate.
Wow. One vote. That really shows how divided things were.
Absolutely. And even though he stayed, it weakened him a lot. It kind of set the tone for continued political fighting.
Which leads us, I guess, to the next big political event.
Right. The election of 1868, and Ulysses S. Grant becomes president.
Grant.
Yeah.
The big Union general from the war.
Hmm.
Super famous, especially up north.
Very popular. And importantly, Grant was much more aligned with Congress on Reconstruction. He supported rights for African Americans.
So his election was seen as maybe a sign that Reconstruction would move forward more strongly.
I think so, yeah. It signaled that the North, or at least a majority of voters there, wanted to see these changes happen.
And under Grant, we see the government getting more involved in the South.
Definitely. The federal government started using its power more directly, sending troops, for instance.
Troops? To do what exactly?
Well, to enforce the new laws passed by Congress and, crucially, to protect the voting rights of African Americans, which were under threat.
Okay, so a much more active approach than Johnson wanted.
Much more. And this is when we start hearing these interesting terms pop up. Scalawags and carpetbaggers.
Right. Those names always stand out. What's the story behind them? Let's start with Carpetbaggers.
Okay, carpetbagger was a nickname, and usually not a nice one for Northerners who moved south after the war.
Why Carpetbagger?
The idea, the sort of negative image, was that they came with just a cheap bag made of carpet, carrying all their belongings, looking to get rich quick, or take advantage of the South's situation.
And that's how many white Southerners saw them, as untrustworthy outsiders.
Often, yes, there was a lot of resentment. But like most things, it's more complicated.
How so?
Well, while some probably were just looking for opportunities, many others moved south with genuinely good intentions.
Like what?
Teachers came to set up schools, especially for formerly enslaved people. Business people came to help rebuild. Some were former Union soldiers who wanted to help shape a new South.
Okay, so a mixed bag, really. Not just opportunists.
Exactly. They played a really significant role, helping to set up new state governments and pushing for reforms.
Got it. Now what about Scalawags? That sounds even worse.
It was definitely meant as an insult. Scalawag was the term used for white Southerners who supported Reconstruction and the Republican Party.
So white people in the South siding with the North's plan.
Basically, yes. They were seen by many other white Southerners as traitors to their region. The name itself referred to a kind of worthless farm animal.
Ouch. Why would a white Southerner become a scalawag?
Different reasons. Some had opposed secession before the war. Others were maybe less wealthy farmers who resented the power of the old planter aristocracy and hoped Reconstruction would give them more of a voice.
So not necessarily because they believe strongly in racial equality.
Some did, some maybe less so, but they saw cooperating with the Republicans and with Black citizens as the best way forward for themselves or for the South's future. They became a key part of the Republican coalition in the South.
Interesting. So you have these Northerners, the Carpetbaggers, and these Southern whites, the Scalawags, working alongside.
Alongside African Americans who were now entering politics for the first time in American history, and that was maybe the most revolutionary change of all.
Absolutely. Before the war, no political power. Now things are changing.
Dramatically. With the right to vote being enforced, at least for a time, African American men started getting elected.
To what kinds of positions?
All sorts, really. Lots were elected to state legislatures, helping to write new state constitutions. And incredibly, some were even elected to the U.S. Congress itself, House and Senate.
That's just amazing to think about. Can we talk about someone specific?
We definitely should. Hiram Rhodes Revels is the perfect example. He was the very first African American to serve in the U.S. Senate.
Wow. Tell us about him.
Well, Revels was born free in North Carolina back in 1827. He managed to get an education, which wasn't easy then, became an ordained minister,
A preacher.
yes, for the African Methodist Episcopal Church. He was also an educator. During the Civil War, he helped recruit black soldiers and served as a chaplain for a black regiment.
So he was already a leader in his community.
Very much so. After the war, he settled in Natchez, Mississippi. He got involved in politics there, somewhat reluctantly at first, people say.
And he got elected.
First as an alderman, then to the Mississippi State Senate in 1869.
And then the big one, the U.S. Senate.
Exactly. In 1870, the Mississippi legislature elected him to fill a U.S. Senate seat that had been vacant since Mississippi seceded from the Union before the war.
A seat that had once been held by Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy.
Precisely. The symbolism was incredibly powerful. There was debate in the Senate about seating him, but he was eventually admitted.
I read that Senator Charles Sumner gave a speech saying this was making the Declaration of Independence real, finally achieving equality.
Yes, it was a landmark moment. And Revels wasn't just a symbol. He participated actively.
What did he do in the Senate?
In his first major speech, he argued powerfully for reinstating black legislators in Georgia who had been illegally expelled from their state government. He called for fairness.
Did he take strong stances on other issues?
He did. Interestingly, he supported amnesty, basically. Forgiveness for former Confederates, provided they swore loyalty to the U.S. He wanted reconciliation.
What about issues like segregation?
His views there were, well, nuanced for the time. He spoke against legally mandated segregation, arguing it bred prejudice. He famously objected to segregated schools in D.C. But he was also cautious about forcing social integration, recognizing the deep-seated prejudices that existed. He believed ending discriminatory laws and focusing on education was key.
Education seems really important to him.
Extremely. He believed it was vital for the progress of freedmen. He also took practical steps, like nominating a black candidate to West Point, though the candidate was ultimately denied admission. And he fought for black mechanics who were barred from working at the Washington Navy Yard.
So he used his position to advocate for specific people and causes.
Yes, though his time in the Senate was relatively short, just over a year to finish the term.
What happened after he left the Senate?
He went back to Mississippi and became the first president of Alcorn Agricultural and Mechanical College, now Alcorn State University, a historically black university.
So he went back to education.
He did. He also briefly served as Mississippi's interim Secretary of State. Later in life, he actually became critical of some corruption he saw within the Republican Party in Mississippi and briefly aligned with Democrats before returning to ministry and education.
Quite a life. His story really highlights both the incredible opportunities and the complexities of this era.
It really does. You see the impeachment fight showing the resistance to change. You see Grant's election and these new groups, Carpetbaggers and Scalawags, shifting the political landscape.
And then you have the breakthrough moment of African Americans like Revels actually holding high office.
Yeah.
It's a period of huge political shifts.
Absolutely. Reconstruction politics were messy, groundbreaking, and set the stage for debates about rights and power that continued for generations.
So wrapping up our deep dive today, we've covered some really big political moments from Reconstruction. That intense clash between President Johnson and Congress.
Yeah, the impeachment. Then the rise of President Grant and these new political players in the South, the Carpetbaggers and Scalawags.
Right, those terms that carried so much weight. And maybe most importantly, those incredible first steps of African Americans gaining real political power, holding office like Hiram Revels.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how different people experienced this time, what motivated them, the hopes and the fears.
And it leaves us with something to consider, I think. African Americans achieved these historic political gains during Reconstruction, getting elected for the first time. But many of those gains were rolled back later on.
That's the hard part.
So what does that tell us about making lasting change? How fragile progress can be, perhaps? And do we see echoes of this big steps forward, followed by pushback at other times of major social change?
That's a powerful question to reflect on. The journey towards equality and full representation is often not a straight line.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.